More on trade. Joining me is Yan Liang, a professor of economics at Willamette University. Let's start with this news from the China-ASEAN Expo. I was just jotting some notes. 80 investment projects, and also these agreements beyond that. The Foreign Ministry spokesperson saying that China is quickening the pace of opening up. So talk to us about what's happening in the region, how dynamic it is, and how has it weathered the pandemic versus other parts of the world?
Great to talk to you, Mike. So you're right, this is a very major expo. This is the 17th that China and ASEAN together held this expo, and this is the first one after the signing of RCEP. So it really shows that the regional trade and investments are taking on a new momentum. So as at the top, the introduction says there are 80 projects that are signed with $40 billion. And so this is really the bright spotlight when the global trade is trending down, and WTO forecasted, a 7 to 9% of a shrinkage of global trade this year. But I think the ASEAN countries with China at the regional level, they're really trading actively together. We're looking at China this year so far has registered a export growth of about 8.8%, and Vietnam, for example, 10.8% of growth in trade and export this year. So I think this regional trade networking is working very well. On the one hand, this is a regionalization of supply chain as a result of that, and then the other reason is because all these countries are coming together and determined to engage in multilateral trade.
Let me ask you, because you brought up RCEP, what's going to be the overall impact of that, do you think?
Right. So in the short run, I think we're mostly seeing a confidence boost that these countries are going to come together and commit to regional free trade. So we'll see gradually, tariffs will be phased out and reduced among many different countries and different products. But in the short run, we think that there are still some tariff protections, for example, for Japan's rice production, wheat, and etc., some agricultural products. And I think some critiques would say, this trade pact does not go far enough. It does not, phase out tariffs fast enough, etc., etc. But I think this is a great first step, and it also accommodates different needs of different countries. We're talking about 15 countries that are very different in their developmental stages, etc. So I think we need to give time for these countries to gradually transition into that broader free trade and free investment network.
And the weather's getting colder in a lot of parts of the world right now, and it's looking like it's going to be a grim winter. There's a lot of talk about a second wave of the virus. We're certainly seeing it here in the United States and in other parts of the world. Since China has embraced globalization, how will the country be impacted by these rising cases we're seeing in other places where perhaps they're not focused on trade, they're focused on trying to strangle this virus?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think China can definitely play a very significant role in helping the rest of the world, right? So I think on the one hand, China has demonstrated that the virus can be contained as long as you have the political will and the effective, policy measures. On the other hand, I think China can also help by, continue with this production to supply the rest of the world the important, PPEs, etc., and also joint efforts in developing vaccines. Not to mention China's demand imports, right, from the rest of the world will boost the global demand significantly. So I think China can do a lot in helping the rest of the world.
And what a difference a year makes, because in 2019, people didn't have any problem jumping on planes. Now they'd rather jump on bikes. We just had that story on there. What about new markets or new opportunities presented by the pandemic? Because Fortune magazine had a headline recently saying Amazon was built for the pandemic and will likely emerge from it stronger than ever. Clearly, there have to be sectors or companies in China also well positioned for this pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. I think, any disruption, any sort of structural changes, any economic crisis always brews opportunities. So what we've seen is, in terms of trade, we see energy production has gone down, the demand for it, and machinery and many of other sectors are struggling, like the services industry. But digital economy has been seeing, really vibrant, very rapid growth in the digital economy. So we have many products, for example, the home offices and home school supplies and equipment. All these are seeing surge in production and trade. Not to mention, online retails. All these are really bright spots. Telecommunication, that's why I think it's so important that we continue to develop digital infrastructure to support that new economy.
Absolutely. Yan Liang, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.